Well, that's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel and log on armoroftruth.net.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the show. Armor of Truth Live number 293, Disordered Ambition. Today we're talking about Congress, aliens, not really about Congress, but about aliens and the gender industry. It might seem like a stretch. It might seem like it. They don't really, what's the deal with that, right? Well, you see in Galatians 5, verses 16 through 25, the acts of the flesh and then the fruits of the Spirit. The acts of the flesh and then the fruits of the Spirit. And in those acts of the flesh, one of the acts of the flesh that's mentioned. Let's take a look at it. Let's do it this way. Let's go full. Galatians 5. Now, if you remember, this is the passage where you get the fruits of the Spirit. If you've tried to memorize those, very few people ever try to memorize the acts of the flesh, though. Apostle Paul says, "But I say, walk by the Spirit." Now, let me just point this out too. The reason he's writing this to these Galatians is because something known as the Galatian heresy. A similar thing happened at the church in Colossae, and it's Gnosticism. It might not be pure definitional Gnosticism. At Colossae, it was an odd version. But here, in the church at Galatia, there's something like that going on. And the idea there is, well, Jesus wasn't a real man. He was just spiritual. The idea is the flesh is evil. You've got to get out of the flesh. And that is the trans movement, to get beyond the flesh. That's what Friedrich Nietzsche said, that mankind needs to transcend. It needs to evolve beyond the flesh. Galatians 5:16 starts this way, "But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other." That doesn't mean that the body is evil. It just means the flesh here means worldly desires. Verse 18, "If you are led by the Spirit, you're not under the law, but the works of the flesh are these." And they're evident, Paul says. "They are sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality." It means being preoccupied with feelings and sensations. "Idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions." You see there, verse 21, "envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God." And then, fruits of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22 through 24. "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control," or temperance. And another word for gentleness there would be meekness. "Against such things there is no law. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires." Okay. Let's go here. So we'll start out here. We're going to talk a little bit about one of a feminist writer that we've covered a few times here, Jennifer Bielik. We'll get to that in a minute. She's written very well about the transgender industry and who actually runs that. That's billionaire men with a strange fetish to collect women's parts for themselves, to wear women's bodies, wear women's body parts. It's a very strange condition. As we build up to that, though, we want to talk just a little bit about we'll introduce for you here this idea of how does this fit with the UFO cult? Both are guilty of the same sin, and that would be envy. Envy that causes resentment and entitlement. If you heard our talk about the totalitarian urge, we had that the other day. We talked about we all have it. So you have to be aware of that right off the bat. This Galatians 5 shows us this too. These are things that we're all bent toward. And so both of these movements share the same disordered ambition. They share the same idea. They want you to believe that our origins are wrong. They're fighting against God's design. They're fighting against specifically the origins of humankind and the purpose of humanity. Origins and purpose. All right. The dominant worldview in the West is no longer biblical Christianity. It's no longer centered in a true seeking for truth. But the dominant worldviews in the West are certainly religious. They're humanistic. They're syncretistic. It's a humanistic, syncretistic mixture of politics and spirituality, or materialism and Gnosticism. And feminism is at the root of a lot of it. Feminism is certainly at the root of the transgender movement. So to address these concerns in order to fulfill the Great Commission in the West, or anywhere for that matter, we need to try to understand who we're dealing with. What do they believe? Where are they wrong? And how do we correct it? So, to do this, we have 2 Corinthians 10, verses 3 through 6. For though we walk in the flesh, we're not waging war according to the flesh. The weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but our weapons have divine power to destroy strongholds. And this would be an example of a stronghold would be when you're committed to the extraterrestrial hypothesis, which says there's just too vast. It's just too vast out there. There has to be other beings like us or similar to us. Aliens must exist. It's impossible for them not to exist. That's the Drake equation, and we've shown you here how the Drake equation doesn't really prove that aliens have to exist. It proves that we shouldn't even exist. It proves how unlikely life in the universe actually is. It proves the opposite. So 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, we destroy arguments. We destroy the arguments or the whatever evidences that they try to give to uphold their strongholds. Another stronghold would be this trans movement, this idea that we can transcend the body, that we can overcome our flesh physically. We can change it. There's an idea too called mimesis and poiesis. Mimesis, the idea that you're born into the world and then the proper response to that would be to conform within it, male and female, come together and create more people. We conform ourselves to our communities in order to make them strong. The other idea would be poiesis, which you just see. All you see around you is you see nature as a tool to be used for your advantage. You see the human body as something that needs to be cultivated, something that needs to be how do I put it? It's raw material. The transgender movement, and I'm talking about these billionaire men who are funding it and running it, they see flesh, they see the human flesh as something to be manipulated, raw material to be manipulated for their pleasure or for their profit. So we try to destroy these arguments. Every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, UFO narrative. Billy Carson is a guy that's out there now that he's become very popular. He was on the Sean Ryan show a month or so ago, and he's really hit hard here lately since the Pentagon's UFO footage was released, and everybody's, the Chinese spy balloon and all of this. Everyone's very excited about the government's now, it's disclosure, right? Well, every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, which in this case would be our origins. Billy Carson's out there, and a lot of UFO narrative has to do with the fact that aliens seeded this planet. They created humanity or something like that. Or we see on the Y-Files. Let's see, the Y-Files had a show recently where, here you go. We are the aliens, and who made us? And
this episode of the Y-Files.
Let's not do that. The title of the show is Life's Interstellar Journey to Earth, Panspermia. It's the idea that generally that the way humanity came about was that there were elements out in the universe, or could have been other forms of life, or the elements necessary for life that ended up landing on planet Earth somehow through comets. That takes a lot of faith. That takes a whole lot more faith than the biblical narrative, biblical creation, biblical anthropology. Okay, so we'll deal with some of that today too. So let's start out here. We'll come back around to the UFO stuff. I want to introduce to you, not introduce to you, but remind you of this article that we had recently. We had an article come out yesterday about Trump, the two major problems that we found with Trump. Read the article called God Made Trump. We encourage you to read that to find out what are the two major problems that even a Trump win would cause us. But we had this article last week, Appetite for Distraction, the UFO religion that has invaded Congress. Since 2017, the Pentagon first began classifying these videos of these U.S. military fighter pilots tracking and recording UFOs, or UAP. And so many members of Congress and agencies within the Pentagon have been enamored. They've been seduced. They're in love with this small group of UFO activists, these alien influencers. And they've wooed legislators into holding multiple hearings where non-human biologics, David Grush called it, are presented as an unchallenged fact. They've also mesmerized the media into reporting all of their claims. So this UFO cult has. And all this is done and treated as a legitimate use of government resources without a shred of evidence of anything extraterrestrial. Keep in mind, folks, they've spent millions of dollars on this so far. They gave $22 million away to Bigelow. That was all that was. Just so you know, all that was to study Skinwalker Ranch. Stephen Greenstreet is, there he is. Stephen Greenstreet is a New York Post investigative journalist. He has a show called The Basement Office. Started out as a believer in the ET hypothesis, or that these UFOs could be alien. And as he followed the evidence, slowly over a matter of a couple of years, he came to find this is not true at all. In fact, there is a group of activists, a small group of activists out there who are influencing Congress. And when you hear them say, we've got these reports, we've got whistleblower reports and evidence coming in from all that, it's just coming in, it's the same incestuous group. They're the whistleblowers. They're the only ones involved. It all comes back to a December 2017 New York Times article written by Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. Right here, this article. There it is. I don't think New York Times lets me show there. There's the article, but they're very proud of that article. They want you to pay to read it. But this is the article where this is what Congress refers to. They all refer back to this article. You've got to read this. This is the bombshell report. Leslie Kean, one of the reporters who wrote this article, admitted in an interview on Showtime that this article was about the $22 million program called ATIP, which is very suspicious anyway. But what that $22 million was, Senator Harry Reid from Nevada convinced Congress to fund research at Skinwalker Ranch. So he secured $22 million for his buddy, who is Bigelow. I can't remember Bigelow's first name right now. But Bigelow, who at that time owned Skinwalker Ranch. That's what it was for. But she didn't put that in the article, and she admitted why she didn't put that in the article. It's because she wanted UFOs to be taken seriously. But the truth is, that was $22 million to study werewolves, portals, dino beavers. You have to read to understand what in the world that is. Bigfoot, and oh, by the way, a UFO if one shows up. But the article in New York Times was presented as if, well, look at this program that the government's been researching UFOs all along. Well, that's a lie. So, and I present that to you now because we want to establish the foundation here that this UFO narrative has no legs. There is no evidence. And those who push it, we'll try to come back around to this. And we may or may not come back around to this if we have time, because I want to get over to summer here very, very quickly here to start talking about our primary topic tonight, which is the transgender movement. If you look at Stephen Greenstreet's Twitter or his X profile, you can see they're attacking him all over the place. They are so mad at him. One of the main pushers of the UFO movement is Jeremy Corbell, or Jeremy Kenyon Lockyer Corbell. It's four names. I've been keeping up with Corbell since probably about 2012. You know, when he started out on Vimeo. He's a very good filmmaker. He's an artist. He was also a yoga trainer for a while. But this is steeped in, I would go so far as to say, if there's a religion there, it would be Gnostic in its sense, because it's about higher planes and higher spirituality. But he's got a show now called Weaponize, and his tagline is "Weaponize your curiosity." Right? You're supposed to keep an open mind always, right? Just keep an open mind, but that's not actually true. We need to apprehend some truth and hold on to it. He says the world is creaking under. There it is. He says the world is creaking under the stress and weight of the UFO reality, and it's about time. I suspect a total structural collapse of consensus reality shortly. You see what we're talking about here? The trans movement and this movement have a lot of reality. The UFO cult will tell you that they're just trying to uncover the truth. But the problem with that is they don't have any coherent standard of truth. If we have time, I'll come back to this. If not, we'll do a separate show on this sometime. I want to show you how ridiculous. Let me show you one thing here. One of the main things they've been showing here lately is this jellyfish UFO. And it's just
like a sphere or a saucer, but this shape has been seen since the beginning of UAP or UFOs. They call it the jellyfish UAP.
Look at this. This is the evidence right here.
It's in thermal. It was filmed on a weapons platform. You see that there's a
All right, there we go.
dog there. See the animals are black. I'm assuming this is black hot. You see the object just went to white, and you'll see it going from white to black, and that's
Okay, that's the evidence. I'll have to jump back over here so you can actually see this, because I want to show you why this is not. It's not a UFO. It's a balloon. It's a weapons platform itself.
UFO, like a sphere or a saucer, but this shape has been seen since the beginning of UAP or UFOs. They call it the jellyfish UAP. It's in thermal. It was filmed on a weapons platform. You see that there's a dog there. See the animals are black. I'm assuming this is black hot. You see the object just went to white, and you'll see it going from white to black, and that's basically showing the heat differential. So it's going like hot and cold, hot and cold. The problem was the optics platform was jammed. These individuals who target with these platforms, they can shoot out an Al-Qaeda tire at 27 miles away, but not being able to lock it was one of the first signs that something's weird. I was able to find direct eyewitnesses and corroborate that this event did happen. When individuals would target in on it with the optics, the way it was described, each of these hanging things, they were stiff, like they weren't moving. They had geometric form, like scales. What was said to me is scales, like an armor. There were also people with night vision who were out, and they were tasked to go look for it. Couldn't see it on the night vision. Only in the thermal spectrum could it be seen.
Okay, there are a lot of claims there, but look, we can show you right off the bat here. The problem with this, let's go back here for just a second. So it's turning, you can see that, right? It's going from white to black. What that means is that obviously it's changing, its temperature is changing because this is infrared. I want you to look right here. You see the black or the dark area at the top left, 3/4 of the way up. Watch what happens here as this object changes colors. Oh, there it goes to black. So does the ground. So does the ground, right? So it's not the object shifting in shade. It's the camera adjusting to the light. This is infrared camera, so it would be looking for heat signatures, but it's overall adjusting on its exposure. Or now look, see there it is again. Now the object is a light colored, so it's obviously changing temperature, and they can't lock in on it. That's because it has no heat signature. It's because it's a balloon. They can't lock in on it with their weapons because it's a balloon. Doesn't have any heat signature, really. Now you can see right here again where, right back here. Let's have to go back here at the beginning. Here we go. You can see this again where it is close-up of the thing. Oh, there it is. See there? Now it's obviously cool color because it's light. Watch it as it changes color. It's out of this frame. Here we go. Right there's the dogs. There, see there? See how it went from, and now back to, as it turns dark, so does the background. Okay, so this is silly. So the problem is this is not alien technology. This is a balloon. It's actually, I think some people were able to pinpoint that it actually is some kind of a weapons platform too. But over and over and over, Corbell puts out this evidence. There's another one where he has this green triangle, and it sort of flashes. And what that was shown, there's a hair. I had a UFO in the studio. What that actually was it was the aperture of the camera. You'll notice that a lot of these UFOs are the same shape as the aperture of the camera photographing them. Let's see. So the other one, bear with me. I've got a new setup I'm trying to learn here. All right. One last piece here. This one, this was the, let me get this on the big screen for you too. So this is the 29 Palms Triangle. 29 Palms Triangle. all of this. Here are the facts. You heard Corbell say there earlier, he said about, I was able to get corroboration that this event happened. That doesn't mean anything. Yeah, okay, clearly it happened. We've got some video. It did happen. He got no corroboration of anything other than that. So this is supposed to be a craft. This picture here. This is supposed to be a craft. And I mean, he went in on this. He doubled down on it. These are flares. Been shown to be flares, and you can just about see at the top of the lights there, if I can zoom in on it here. You can see the smoke streams. It's a flare. It's nothing more than flare. So maybe we'll come back and do some more work with this at some point. But Corbell is a grifter. I don't say that lightly because I always enjoyed his work, years ago. But he's found, he is the guy that the media will call. He is one of those true believers that is informing the Congress, that's causing the Congress to waste your tax dollars on this snipe hunt. So this is generally how you see them respond. Debunkers beware. If you'll pardon me here for a moment. Horseshit is still horseshit. Especially after it sits a bit. Just ask Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the disgrace to common scientific American principles. Is that an argument? Sean Kirkpatrick was a guy who just retired from the Pentagon, and he was actually part of a group that was tasked with investigating these phenomena. He wrote an article for Scientific American saying, we didn't find evidence of anything extraterrestrial. No such non-human biologics. Remember, when someone says something is a non-human biologic, that could be a dog, that could be an insect. It doesn't have to be alien. In fact, it's not alien. It's never going to be alien. You see there on the screen, a lot of these UFOs, in fact, one that was shown on the big screen at the old To the Stars Academy, big, thousands of people, had this UFO. It turned out to actually be a Mylar balloon. But Corbell is... let's see, there's another one where he's mad at Stephen Greenstreet for the work that he's been doing at. All Greenstreet is doing is following the evidence. And when there's not any evidence, he's telling them there's no evidence for what you're saying. So here you go. Shots fired. Put on your UFO battle helmets. I love when George Knapp is sarcastic. Y'all should watch this episode of Weaponized. Okay, maybe we can come back later. All right, so now, the point here is that the overall narrative is that we need disclosure, because we need to, the government just needs to tell us that these aliens are here, because we all know that humanity was engineered by the Anunnaki, by the aliens, at some form or another. So it has to do with the origins and the purpose of humanity. What's the purpose of humanity? Well, some of them believe we're being farmed by aliens. It's all speculation. All right. Jennifer Bielik is writing about transgenderism as the corporate, welcome. There we go. Sorry.
Good evening.
How about just, let me look at our outline here. So when we're talking about the trans cult, we just did a little bit of UFO cult. There are a lot of, our first question was, who are they, right? That was the question we were asking. There's a lot of other characters in the UFO cult. But in the trans cult, who are...
Well, you've got...
Basically, who are these billionaire men, right? I'll get some graphics up here.
Yeah, we've got Tim Gill.
Oh, let me show you guys the Tim Gill quote first before you even get going, Summer. Look at this.
Okay.
We're going to punish the wicked. Right? This is what he said in the Rolling Stone article, and that had to do with a bill in a lot of states to protect religious freedom. His goal at first was to fund the movement to stop anybody from protecting religious freedom. And that's what he means here. We're going to punish the wicked. We're going to punish anybody who wants to protect religious freedom, because they intend to come in and change everything. Okay, so
So Tim Gill, philanthropic billionaire that he is, figures like Martine Rothblatt, which we have spoken about before, who is a transsexual transhumanist.
The creator of Sirius XM.
Yes,
Sirius Satellite Radio.
and also the creator of transgender law, and transsexual law, health law, internationally. And she brought that into being back in 1993. I called him her, but Martine is behind that. So just 1993.
Do I have Rothblatt? Do I have a picture of Rothblatt?
We do have a slide of that.
There's Rothblatt. There's that's a man. That's Martin.
So yeah,
we're making God as we are. We're making God as we're implementing technology that is ever more all-knowing, ever-present, all-powerful, and beneficent. We're making God, he says.
Right. So this is, just listen to the title of this. This was Transsexual and Transgender Health Law from 1993 at the Second International Conference on Transgender Law and Employment Policy. So just think about, this is 1993. These policies being written into reality on a on an international level. ARCUS and Gill Foundations support a myriad of global programs to drive the idea that children can be the opposite sex, such as Gender Spectrum, the Transgender Law Center, Lambda. Among the many founders is, of course, George Soros. He has owned significant stock shares in Johnson & Johnson, which promotes the removal of children's reproductive organs as progressive.
Yeah. That's one of the main points, is that we were trying to think about who is it that they target. And it's generally, it's the children.
And Jennifer B. Children
and the vulnerable parts of society, people who are resentful.
Yeah, people who are traumatized. They really want to hone in on. Well, they want to cause the trauma to get people dissociated in order to be susceptible, but they also want to draw in the people that are traumatized enough to think that this is a great option for themselves. Jennifer Bielek would say that the transgender child was created to sell the deconstruction of human reproductive sex to the public, that children are being groomed to think of themselves as parts, not wholly sexed beings. So that's something that Jennifer Bielek would say. So, we've got Soros. Apparently, he's currently invested in health platforms and Salesforce cloud computing, whose co-founder is deeply invested in creating synthetic sex identities for children. Soros Open Society Foundation is working to construct, along with the Gill Foundation and the Arcus Foundation, HRC and ACLU, the Gender Identity Organization in Europe, the idea that children are being medicalized for life, like that's just going to be normalized, that this is the new way to be a human being, is to be in this process of trans, right? So tons of money being, and people being funneled in to pediatric gender clinics. So,
what's the purpose? What is what's the purpose of it all? What gunning for?
Okay, well, based on what her hypothesis would be, it's that it has to do with envy, because these men want to appropriate women's reproductive parts. They want to appropriate women's parts, and they want to, if you will, think about the Georgia Guidestones, guide reproduction wisely. They want to take reproduction away from women, and they want to medicalize that, put that into the medical industrial complex.
They ultimately, it's third type of human being.
Correct. So coming up with the third sex.
She said, you might have this note. She says they want to create a third type of human, divorced from biological reality. That's the. She says it's the pretext for the sale of artificial sex characteristics. And that ultimately paves the way for this technological revolution in human reproduction, which is what someone just said, guide reproduction wisely. They want to own the means of reproduction.
Right.
And the creation of this third sex, this third gender that has special rights?
Third category of sexed human beings. So the notion of a third type of human, divorced from biological reality, serves as a pretext for the sale of artificial sex characteristics and ultimately paves the way for a technological revolution in human reproduction. This process moves us away from our intimate connections to biology, each other, and will, if successful, make women obsolete. The gender industry thrives on dismantling the gender industry thrives on dismantling the understanding of biological sexes and promotes an untold number of fluid sexual identities. But it's important to remember, of course, that none of these, what they're trying to sell, in other words, is not actual reality. So you're being sold this idea that you can become the opposite sex, but that's not in fact true.
You can transcend your body, or you can change it, right? That's his poesis. Your body is just raw material to make it however you want to make it.
And this idea of tying this construct of trans rights to another kind of human, to the already established human rights apparatus for people with same-sex attraction via the LGBT NGO and political infrastructure, it's noted as a strategic genius. So again, it's sort of this trans rights has latched itself on to the LGBTQ plus movement under the guise of human rights.
So we were able to identify that there's three big ways that they're doing this, three ways that they're attempting to achieve their goals.
Yes.
One of the main goals is to create this third sex with these artificial characteristics, neither male nor female, it's just some other. And the other would be, as you said, since it's really funded and controlled by billionaire men, that they want to appropriate female body parts for themselves. They want to have them and own them. Mm-hmm. This is, as some said a minute ago, Galatians 5, envy. They're envious of that women have the ability to create, or that life comes forth through women. They want to own that. They want those body parts for themselves, and they want to control eventually the means of reproduction. We talked about this before, Summer, right? That they ultimately they want reproduction to occur.
To guide reproduction wisely, is that what?
No, they want to. It's going to be a technology, right? They want to do it.
They want reproduction strictly under the medical complex.
They want babies to grow in bags instead of in women, or maybe they want the babies to grow. Anyway, so we've got to create the third sex, appropriate these body parts of women, ultimately until women are just erased. So how are they doing that? Three ways: through law. You've hit some of those points. Through language, they're redefining terms, and through the medical. And you've hit a lot of that already. Law, language, and medical. So just remember that. Law, language, medical. Yes. That's where they attack.
So in law, you've got, again, the Transsexual and Transgender International Health Law written by Martine Rothblatt, as we spoke about earlier.
Exactly. So that's actually legal and medical.
Correct.
In one, yeah.
And it's also about hiring them as well. So employment. So protections for employment. The WHO is currently involved in transgender healthcare, so working on creating guidelines for the world to follow regarding trans health law, guidelines for the health of trans and gender diverse people. In that same vein, if you rewind to 2015, you see Open Society Foundation created a legal guide also for the transgender child entitled Trans Children and Youth. So the transgender child is a corporate, legal, and technological construct. If you want to look at how language, you think about what the WHO is doing with hate speech, right? So anybody that might be speaking against this.
That's language and law right there together.
Yeah, language and law. So we've spoken a lot about lawfare. So all this would come under the banner of lawfare as warfare. The WHO is seeing to that there will be a legal recognition of gender self-identification. So if you want to say, hey, I'm a dude, then, everybody's got to recognize it. So the WHO is currently involved in making that process law. Okay, so hate speech, obviously pronouns, public shaming, groupthink, and mob mentality, and snitching, right? And all of this leading to being canceled if you're not on board with all of this, and you're not
social engineering,
uber supportive. You're being guilted and shamed into accepting this, even to the point where you're horrified of whether your child will perceive that you're somehow rejecting them in some sort of way, where the government can come in and just grab your kid and
we've
disappear
covered
your
that,
kid.
where out in California, Washington State, and probably more places now, where these where they're like what we would call them around here, shelters, runaway facilities. I don't know what the term, I can't remember the term, but anyway, there would be these facilities, these shelters where they're set up ostensibly as runaway shelters, but your child could go there and could say that they want to, they're having gender dysphoria.
They identify with the opposite sex.
Or anything. They could say anything probably, but they need to be sheltered from their parents. And this group would do it, and they would keep the parents from. And there's a statistic I heard yesterday. I was listening to Apologia Radio, and this is something that we've talked about here before. But that when you talk about Child Protective Services, of all the cases that they have to respond to, it's like 80 or 85%. It could be even higher, but I think it's 85% most likely there is no problem. There's nothing wrong there. These are just reports that were unsubstantiated, or there's no abuse going on there. So that's dangerous, because it would be Child Protective Services that would be policing a lot of this. That would be policing parents and taking children away.
And also in the law, of course, we cannot forget about how the war against the idea of the conversion therapy. And that only goes one way. So if a child is saying, I'm identifying with the opposite sex, if you don't affirm that going in the direction that the child wants, then you're going to be in big trouble, right? So again, that's lawfare. That's one of the ways that they are protecting this transgender policy, and they're upholding it, right? They're putting it up on a pedestal and saying this is reality.
It's madness.
So I wanted to bring out another point too. I would say also in fashion, movies, and Netflix, you see a strong programming for this as well that's
Constantly.
Supporting it. It's constant. If you think about the idea of gender blending is commonly used as the definition is as a rebellion against socially constructed expectations of gender or gender roles. If you look into the origins of this, it actually came about back in the 1960s and 70s. So it seems sort of contemporary, but it would be surprised for you to know that gender blending and the concept of this has been going on for a while. You think of Joan of Arc, going back even further. There's movies in the 80s too, like Billie Jean, where you could see this. So this idea of the gender blending, the androgenization.
The Legend of Billie Jean. I didn't see that, and Summer showed me that clip the other day, and I thought you can find that clip on YouTube. That was really shocking, because it was more than obvious.
Yeah, that was a movie that was going all the time on cable TV when I was growing up.
What are some other ones? We found The Legend of Billie Jean. We thought about the movie Tootsie was big.
Tootsie. We talked about
Ms. Doubtfire.
Yeah. I don't know. What were they? I'm drawing a blank, but.
No, I've got it here. I can pull it up.
Okay.
We didn't plan on going there.
We were talking about Richard Simmons, because he's come work out with Richard Simmons after Jane Fonda blew up. So that's another
most
vein
obvious.
Of,
yeah.
But we're kind of going off topic a bit, but you think about Boy George and Prince. So this androgenization, gender blending, so with the clothing and fashion, just clothes that are effeminate on men or more masculine on women.
I got it here.
Tell me.
9 to 5, Dolly Parton.
Oh, yes.
With Dabney Coleman was the boss.
I saw that one.
Dolly Parton. Oh, boy. The female comedian. Anyway, the point was you've got this boss, this oppressive boss, and the secretaries in the office, they rise up against him, and at some point they have him. They have him tied up at home, at one of their houses or whatever. And anyway, so there's Tootsie, Dustin Hoffman. The idea there was a role. he won. I forgot the synopsis overall, but the feminist message in there was very strong, because the Dustin Hoffman was an actor in the movie, and he wanted a role on this soap opera, and role that was available was this role of this woman, this female, this hospital administrator, and he took the role. And in the movie, in the plot, this was a strong feminine force, right? And she was putting men in their place on the soap opera. And isn't that fascinating? Because you have a man dressed as a woman, living as a woman, fulfilling all the
the role reversals,
fulfilling all of the feminist tropes, the feminist ideals, right, on these other men. But it wasn't a woman at all. That's the same thing as this transgender movement here. It's really funded and controlled by men.
Right.
Miss
So
Doubtfire
it's the
was
ultimate, it's the ultimate erasure of women, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you think about also we've spoken about this as well, the female leads, looking like they have the strength of men or superpowers, or just like men and women that have superpowers. So this idea that we're coming into this age now where you're going to be able to get these chip implants and everybody's got superpowers. So this is another, just a way that Netflix and movies and streaming media influences this. And then of course, the medical surgery, the medical complex that's now hoisting these ideas up as well with the hormones and the surgeries and the puberty blockers and all this kind of stuff.
The medical. So 3 ways: through law, through language, and through the medical industry as well. Do you mind is it a good time I just wanted to hit the points at the bottom of Jennifer Bielick's article?
Sure.
I mean, I want to make sure that you got through all, or at least most of your points.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the other thing is when they do these puberty blockers and these hormones and at a young age, that also works in tandem to control reproduction wisely, if you will. That's in air quotes, by sterilizing people. So that's causing major problems. It's causing patients for life. So they're going to be having all kinds of repercussions from making those bold choices, whether they have surgeries or they do these hormone therapies that often will lead to sterilization, and then certainly being a patient for life, which is cha-ching for the medical industrial complex.
That seems to be what the medical industry is more concerned about today overall, is creating customers, return customers. That's how you run a good business, right? It's good if people come to your business, but you need them to come back over and over and over. That's interesting that point there too needs to be said a lot. This is a point that came out in Abigail Schreier's book about the transgender movement and how they're really attacking children with this. The idea being for females who do gender blockers, most of the time, very shortly thereafter, they start taking testosterone hormones. It's not replacement hormones, it's just hormones. They start taking that. So whenever a female does the what do I call them? Gender blockers? Puberty blockers. Puberty blockers. That particular drug or that particular substance, when it's followed up with the testosterone, almost always causes that young girl to be infertile, renders them sterile. Or infertile, I guess, would be more...
Right, because they want to be able to control this. They want to control reproduction.
So you can see that's a huge element of how they get to the point where they control and own the means of reproduction.
And we can think about what happened in 2020 as also another means of that as well.
Yeah, no doubt. As Yuval Noah Harari said, now the age of privacy has changed. Now the surveillance is going under your skin, not just the surveillance, but they want to change you. Bielik says at the end of her article that activists must focus on addressing the root causes, perpetuating the profit-driven interests of the gender industry while safeguarding the rights of individuals and protecting children. Absolutely. Addressing the root causes. That is exactly what we need to do, but we can't stop at these people. We can't stop at nature. We can't stop at, well, there are only two. This is what she says. One of her major points is, which we definitely agree with, is that there are only two genders. We are a dimorphic species. It's male and female, and that's not changeable. But there's an industry now, a gender industry behind all of this. She says challenging its false narratives and advocating for truth in a language that supports our biological reality against a synthetic one will be essential in effecting lasting change. So the point that I want to make on that was that unless you argue for something beyond nature, right? She's saying that we have to. Our point has to be that we're a dimorphic species. We have to speak in terms of truth, right? And that's truth, but we can't stop there. If you don't appeal to some transcendent, objective morality, then these are just two tribes warring back and forth about what they believe is right. Even Jennifer Bielik, her worldview is insufficient to actually overcome this problem because she's arguing from the position that, look, this is nature and we have to honor that. That's true, but that's what they believe they're doing the same thing.
She's saying this is nature, therefore it's grounded in reality.
And it is.
That's not where we should stop.
Right. That is true, but that's not. We can't stop there. Mm-hmm. We can't stop there because then they can just disagree and say no. We believe that nature is for this purpose. Remember, mimesis and poiesis. They believe that nature is there for us to manipulate. The body's there for us to manipulate. If we don't argue beyond that, again, here's an example for you in the Nuremberg trials, where the Nazi officers were tried after World War II, after the Holocaust. The trial came to a stop one day because the officer said, I was just following orders. Right? And that would be to assume that the highest authority was Hitler. In Germany at that time, the highest authority was Hitler. There's nothing above Adolf Hitler. In other words, there's nothing above that natural man in that country at that time. And so it shut the trial down for a little bit until, I can't remember the man's name at this point, but the important part is they realized, wait a minute, there is a higher authority. That higher authority is God. It is known as, in general, at least in secular terminology, as the Creator, capital C. That there is something greater. There is a transcendent morality higher than Adolf Hitler, higher than any president or potentate, and it's God. And they brought that back in, and they essentially, their argument was that it's objective morality is, in that sense, was what they were arguing for. And that's what we have to do. If we continue to stop at, no, this is nature and this reflects reality, which is true, they're just going to deny it and say, no, I think nature is there for me to manipulate. We have to appeal to something beyond nature, or it won't work. And so we talked about also the groups. We covered who are they, what are they doing? They're trying to create a third sex, a third gender. They're trying to appropriate female body parts for themselves. They want to own the means of reproduction. Mm-hmm. That's kind of funny because in Marxism, one of the claims is the means of production. Mm-hmm. And then now it's owning the means of reproduction. And then we talked about what are they doing? How are they doing it? Law, language, and medical. And to whom are they doing this to? So we make the case here that everyone has a totalitarian urge. So we said they're definitely doing this to the vulnerable. That would be teens and children.
Teens, children, people who are traumatized.
Well, that would be the resentful. Anybody who is resentful, anybody who feels like they didn't get a fair shake in this world, in this life, that's someone who is also vulnerable. That's someone who is resentful. And it appeals to that totalitarian urge, which is it's the rationalization of resentment, right? That's a terminology from Roger Scruton. Totalitarian ideologies are adopted because they rationalize resentment. So if you feel like you haven't got enough out of this life, you feel let down, you think the man's against you, you're very likely to respond to somebody who brings you a message and saying, I agree with you. You haven't got enough. You have been held down. And then they unite these people together under some cause. They unite the resentful around this common cause. That's the totalitarian urge. That's how totalitarian ideologies have been used.
Well, you know, another thing that's creepy is I think about, they call them Generation Alpha. And so that you know, isn't it uncanny that it, you know, alpha, like they're starting over, or they're starting to build this new generation. In other words, this new species of human beings. So this is the attempt that's being made.
Yeah, people in the chat are bringing some other names up. We were talking earlier. What we got here? Yeah, Emmanuel Dark says Tom Hanks and Bosom Buddies. Martin Lawrence and Big Mama's House. We got Tyler Perry. Let's see, there was another one here. Yeah, anyway, that was some good points. Well, and so for the UFO cult, it's the same thing. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's the same. It's the same urge. The same urge is at work here. They're both doing activism, and ultimately, it is to confuse the origins of humanity and the purpose of humanity. The origins and purpose of humanity is what they're confusing. The UFO narrative does that. So does the transgender narrative, or we'll call it the gender industry. I think we should probably go with that terminology. That's probably a more comprehensive goal. So the way the UFO cult is doing it is disclosure. The idea of disclosure, right? Don't you feel? Aren't you upset about the fact that your government has lied to you about UFOs forever? Right, we need the truth. The truth is out there, and I want to believe.
Well, again, if people believe that this alien thing is feasible or plausible, then they're going to think that, you know, okay, well, this makes sense with the Big Bang, and this makes sense with evolution.
And that's all it has to be, is feasible.
Right.
Plausible, as long as it's plausible. And they're using some of the same tactics, language, but law. Right now we see, right, they're influencing the Congress. They have really influenced the Congress. And they like to throw around the term science a lot, right? They make claims about science. Both of these groups do. The idea that science is, let me get this. This is, Scruton was reading about this earlier today, that science is, it's how we move, excuse me, it's how we move from truth to truth. Yeah, hang on a second, I'll find this here. He was defining Marxism. Well, I was just,
can I tell my little story here about like being a personal trainer and being a fitness trainer?
Yeah, go for it.
And studies about like hydration and different studies about methodology for fitness. It was widely known amongst us that all of the quote unquote scientific studies, all of the sports studies out there, you just really had to take all of them with a grain of salt. You wouldn't go, okay, this is like the end-all be-all assessment on hydration, because it's just known that even though these studies are commissioned and these studies are out there, they're not necessarily going to be what reflects reality. They're just simply studies, and they're scientific.
And you can buy studies.
You can buy
your science
that you
today.
Want to have proven. Yes.
Right. This is what we were listening to because what we do at home is super nerdy. We were listening to that lecture on technocracy last night. And that's that one of the main points is how a technocracy flourishes is when you can own the science, when you can own the opinions of the scientists. And that's what our peer review system ultimately has caused. It's caused a situation now where the highest bidder can determine the science. That is what we saw in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. It's been building up to that for a long time, because if you can just say, oh, it's the science, we're following the science. No, you're following what those experts were paid to say is the science. This, both of these movements, the UFO movement, the UFO cult, and the trans cult, they're not truth directed. They say they are. The trans movement would say that they're truth directed in that it's my truth, and my truth is the highest truth. The UFO narrative is sort of the same thing. And so it's I'm having a hard time finding it anyway, but I think I've got to understand it well enough to talk about it. The idea here is, though, that when they call something science, they believe that science is the ultimate truth. Science is about observation and results. What did you see in this observation? It's about evidence, and you follow it back from truth to truth. These evidences are used for this new science. That's the scientific method. Are used to create hypotheses, and then we observe and we come up with new evidences. But at some point, if you go back, you need to have a first piece of evidence. Science cannot explain why science works. Science can't explain. Science is not able to account for why we can do science. Why can we do observations? Why does hydrogen behave today the same way it did yesterday? This is the inductive principle, basically. And so this is why we have to argue beyond nature. They're all using nature as the highest order. A lot of people in the UFO cult will say that the universe is eternal. We've talked about this a lot here. That's silly. You can't have an eternal universe. And you can't have a universe that creates itself either. So envy, resentment, and entitlement. Both groups envy something. The trans cult envies the ability, the power that women have to bring forth life. They want to own it, appropriate it, and own the means of reproduction. The UFO cult certainly envies both of them. Here's what I want to say: they both envy God's design. In other words, there's the idea of our true origins and our true purpose. Satan envied God for his power. Satan envied God because he received worship. He wanted that for himself. So when you envy something, you see this thing and you want this attribute. You want to have this attribute for yourself. And then comes this resentment because that person has it and I don't have it. And then comes the entitlement. I deserve to have it. That's how the trans movement works, because they appeal to vulnerable segments of society, those who feel resentful, those who feel like they haven't gotten a fair shake, those who haven't made their way, people who don't feel like they don't fit in with society are very easy targets for that. Same thing with the UFO cult, right? If you envy the biblical narrative, a lot of people today, some of the men in Congress were even saying, "Oh, this fits with the biblical worldview." But that's not true, and they're also very resentful. And the way you can see that they're resentful is when you listen to their their responses whenever they're challenged, right? On Twitter or on X, whenever you challenge one of these guys, especially Jeremy Corbell, and you say, look, you haven't, you've given us this evidence of this jellyfish UFO, but your analysis of this evidence is insufficient, right? You're biased. This is cognitive dissonance or cognitive bias. Everyone has a religion. Not everyone knows they have one. Some call it a worldview, but we determine whether a person's worldview is false by their truth claims and by their standard of evidence. So it's reasonable to criticize both of these movements. Reasonable for me to criticize Jeremy Corbell here. It's easy to criticize George Knapp. It's easy to criticize Tim Gill, Martine Rothblatt, because they are proselytizers of a false religion. We evaluate truth claims by internal and external critique. If a belief is self-contradictory, internally inconsistent, or contradicted by a fact, externally inconsistent, then the belief cannot be true. Any truth claim that fits either of these two criteria is false. Now, what I'm reading from here is the article that we had, that we released, Appetite for Distraction, our article. Here it is that we released last week. We encourage you to read this because it actually talks a lot about Stephen Greenstreet here too. He's done a lot of good work. This is somebody that you can trust when it comes to uncovering the deception or the confusion in the modern UFO cult. The Y Files, I showed you that. They did this video recently, and let me get their thumbnail back up there. I couldn't resist. I had to go and write a little response to that, because it's the idea of panspermia, that life began because comets carrying the proper elements crashed into the earth, and at some point they got together and made life. This has been proven in the lab that it couldn't happen. When you put all the elements necessary for life together and you try to hit it with electricity or something, it never produces life. Drake's equation, we talked about Drake's equation. It's not evidence, right? Drake's equation was the one where we've shown it here a couple times. It's basically, in a nutshell, there's so many planets. There's so many habitable planets out there, and the universe is so vast that it's just inevitable that aliens would exist. But that's not evidence or an argument for the mathematical necessity of extraterrestrial life. It simply serves as further evidence that life is utterly unique in the universe. Rather than proving the inevitability of extraterrestrial life, the Drake equation and any other argument for the vastness of space, the constraints and conditions required to support life, and the fine-tuning of the universe makes it very plain to see that we shouldn't even be here ourselves. Okay. I wanted to leave you at this piece too. I'm getting deep into the notebook now. Virtue, the seeking truth and virtue as in integrity. Virtue can't be fully understood apart from the Christian doctrine of original sin. Both of these sides are arguing from a position of being virtuous because this is my truth. But apart from this starting point, one of the things that was, I'll show you this. I'll show you this too. Aaron Rodgers, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, former quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, was, I'll have to refresh this, was on the Joe Rogan show recently. And these guys were talking about UFOs and aliens. Aaron Rodgers and Joe Rogan talk UFOs, reverse engineering programs, and the impact of UFO disclosure on religion and interdimensional beings. Aaron Rodgers speculates that whether humans have some sort of an alliance with extraterrestrial races. And there's someone, a guy in there, Stephen Green. Look at that, Summer. Look at Green Street's, he posted that.
Very attractive.
I didn't see that, but that's exactly what I feel about their conversation too. Someone responded under that video and said this. Said, first, we need to seriously stop punting away the ball with this interdimensional hypothesis as our best, first, and most logical starting point in explaining the visitation by non-human intelligence. It's none of those things, he said. So we've got another claim to truth here. We're being visited by real physical craft of non-Earth origin, likely piloted by the same beings who by many accounts are physical. That is where it stands. No, it doesn't. There's no evidence for that whatsoever. These are just claims. He says, perhaps they are physical beings that can technologically interface with other dimensions, or perhaps they can simply do things that defy our understanding of natural laws and just looks interdimensional to us. But to start with, they are from another, but he says, to start with, they're interdimensional, which is what Rodgers and Joe Rogan were saying. He says that's wrong-headed. At a certain point, throw your chips on the table and say, I'm in. Okay, this is what it is. Let's deal with it. He says the best, first, and most logical starting explanation is that this is a non-human alien invitation. We should deal with it at that starting point and iterate beyond this based on real evidence that presents itself. He says it is our human need to assume that these are interdimensional, he says, but it's not what's needed. There's no need to assume that they're non-physical, right? This is a materialist perspective. He says, and at a certain point, it becomes a desperate swing of the bat to hit some mythical home run to unravel our great human story by making a connection with this alien visitation that probably doesn't exist. So he says it's not the right approach to say that they're interdimensional. We must start with that these are physical beings, because the worldview can't allow for anything else. Without a true anthropology, which is a right understanding of the nature of all human creatures, to serve self and habitually sin in thought and deed, virtue cannot be truly defined. But we've got plenty of people who are happy to try to do it. The epitome or the universal standard for a virtuous man is Jesus Christ, which is the character of God. So wickedness hates the light. No question about it. Liars hate the truth. Light and truth are what most offend evil. So it's good to want to explain yourself as well as you can. That's a reasonable and rational urge. But if you proclaim truth in a society that hates the truth and is trained to hate it more each day, then that is what will provoke these people to persecute you. You're not going to win the argument by appealing to nature alone. Same thing with the UFO cult as it is with the trans cult. You must get to a first principle. You've got to get to the highest being, the transcendent, objective, moral law, which demands a moral lawgiver. A world that believes 2 + 2 = 5 can only persuade people of such a ridiculous lie by suppressing those who refuse to deny that the real answer is 4. So that's all they're going to do, is they're just going to refuse it. They're going to say you're wrong. You're just wrong. So our encouragement here is simple. Continue to proclaim the truth publicly and prepare to be treated as Jesus was. Prepare to be persecuted. He told us to expect it, after all. By all means, explain yourself well, but don't shy away from claiming offensive truths because people might not be comfortable with it. By the grace of God, if you do that, in the process, you might even convince a few of these pagans and neo-pagans, God haters, just as Peter and Paul both did. How do we need to behave? What can we do? We need Christian men and women to reestablish biblical manhood and womanhood. We need women supporting with hospitality, nurturing, and true feminine wisdom. And we need men going out and engaging the culture boldly, speaking biblical truth to take back the public square. If we don't do this, we can't expect anything to change. So we really appreciate and enjoy reading Jennifer Bielick's work and love an opportunity to talk to her about the ultimate truth, how she can ultimately win her argument with eternal truth. And when it comes to characters like Jeremy Corbell, I just don't think that these people actually love truth. I think they love their narrative. They love with Corbell, it's just, it's the fact that he's now become a media darling. He's now very popular from this. George Knapp is a guy who's been covering the UFO phenomenon for 30 years. He's invested. It's going to take a miracle of God to change hearts that are so invested that way. Summer, you got anything you want to?
No, I was just saying how the illusion, the delusion of aliens, and this delusion of the third sex, in two very different categories, actually express the same thing. Like it's this living in a fantasy world, and how people can get so invested in that, and how it can prop up these worldviews. Like the technocrats want to say that we're heading toward progress, that we're going to get to a point where maybe we don't even have to die. We can beat death. We can live forever. We can upload our consciousness. So this, the transgender industry is obviously the very beginnings of the transhumanist movement. That's what it's about. It's about certainly depersonalizing and dissociating ourselves as these body parts deconstructed, and then, as they said, wanting to control the reproduction wisely, as they say on the Guidestones. They believe this. They've bought the lie, and so it goes back to the garden in the fall, and ye shall be as gods. And it's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous road to go down if you want to play around with those ideas. And yet you've got the medical industrial complex, which is more profitable and larger than the military industrial complex. And you've also got this generation alpha that's being born. And apparently, I was reading some stats on that too, and it's going to be the largest generation ever born by 2025, the largest generation ever born at one time, apparently. So think about how they're taking us away from the image of God and lowering us down into this animal, like we're animals, hackable animals, as Yuval Harari has said. And we just need to hold all of this up to the light of what we know to be true in God's word and dash it out.
Amen to that. Recently, Representative Eric Burleson, who is, what is he? He's a congressman who said this. He said, David Grush's claims of non-human beings from another dimension aligns with God's angels in the Bible. True enough so far.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about that. About a lot of times people will say, "Oh, it's the Nephilim."
Yeah, you can't take something from the book of Enoch and argue biblically from that position. The book of Enoch is not inspired scripture. It's valuable. It's useful for some. At least, at the time it was written, you can learn something about the people who wrote it. But no, you have to stand on the 66 books of the canon, because they're the canon for a reason. Tim Burchett said, Representative Tim Burchett also said, Burleson's UFO hunting partner in Congress also believes in biblical UFOs and recently said the devil was trying to stop UFO disclosure. Congressional leaders like Burleson, Burchett, and Anna Paulina Luna continued their taxpayer-funded snipe hunt based on the dubious claims of crazy UFO activists. And got a couple minutes here. Let me play a little bit of this for you while we're here.
The director of the Pentagon's UFO Investigation Office recently retired, went public, and dropped some bombs. He says during his time investigating UFOs at the Pentagon, with top secret access to everything, he saw no evidence of aliens flying around our skies. And he says a small group of religious UFO conspiracists have spent years duping.
Now let me say, when he says religious UFO activists, he means that their religion is UFOs and aliens.
Congress with false and deceptive stories. And that supports and validates what I've been reporting at the Post for the last 2 years. In this video, I'm going to share new exclusive comments from Sean Kirkpatrick, a scientist who for the last 18 months was the director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. His job was to look for UFOs and try to figure out what they are. He recently resigned from the Pentagon after discovering some unsettling information. I also have new exclusive comments from members of Congress who have also been hunting UFOs. If you want the full backstory with all the gritty details, read my big New York Post article or watch my investigative documentary. Both are linked in the description below. In December 2017.
All right, so Green Street here. This is an excellent video. You can find this on, I think we can probably link this. I'd love for you guys to check this out because he's done such good work. I mean, all he's done is follow the evidence, and David Grush sat in that congressional hearing, and he said, I don't know, I haven't seen any of this myself. I've just been told. Do you know who told him? Do you know who it was that told him that they had possession of these craft and non-human biologics? It was just more people in this same group. I think he's got a shot of them here. Yeah, there we go. This particular group here. Here's a few of them. Kit Green. Hal Puthoff is a Scientologist, a remote viewer. He's been in the UFO community and Skinwalker Ranch investigations. Chris Mellon, George Knapp. There's Jeremy Corbell. Robert Bigelow, billionaire, former owner of Skinwalker Ranch. Eric Davis. There's Lou Elizondo, Jay Stratton, Travis Taylor. All of these people. There's Leslie Keene. All of these people have benefited greatly from pushing this particular narrative. There's a tenet to truth seeking that must be held if our aim is to gain legitimate, useful knowledge. We have to test all truth claims. To test implies that there must be a standard by which claims are measured. People like Billy Carson and Lou Elizondo and Jeremy Corbell, they provide no legitimate sources for any of their claims. They repeat common memes that have been popularized since the advent of the information age. The truth about these topics can be known to a reasonable level of scientific and historical certainty. The degree of speculation that these people use, that they employ, it tips the scales far beyond reasonable. But some people are going to say, what's the harm? Certainly they mean well, right? And if people are fascinated and want to consume this content, who really cares? No, what's the big deal? It doesn't matter what somebody's intentions are. If a bus driver runs off the road and all the passengers are killed, then his good intentions are not going to change the outcome. The topics that Billy Carson and these other people are dealing with are not frivolous topics. Making truth claims about the origins of humanity has severe consequences. Their approach assumes a position of neutrality regarding the facts that is at best fruitless and at worst destructive. This kind of speculation, apart from the discipline of verification, plants a seed of confusion in a person's mind. Right now I'm reading from our Appetite for Distraction article. I just wanted to finish up with this. It's this article right here. Check this article out. Assuming this position of neutrality regarding the facts is fruitless and destructive. Such speculation, apart from the discipline of verification, plants the seed of confusion in a person's mind. That seed eventually sprouts into doubt about who we are, why we're here, and where we're going. When the inherent dignity of mankind is obfuscated by creative speculation, the cost is the loss of the value of each individual. So we're talking about destroying dignity. We're experiencing awful confusion in our society today. Our leaders are chasing speculations and applying labels like non-human, off-world, alien, applying these labels like non-binary, trans man, trans woman, when there's no evidence at all to support any sort of reality of the kind. No evidence to support the phenomena. Anything other than being in the UFO field anyway, there's no evidence that any of these things are anything other than man-made technology or the result of man's well-known weakness as a fallible observer. The standard for evaluating evidence today is dangerously weak. So that makes us as a nation extremely vulnerable to manipulation by actors and nations who would like to see us fall. Worse, the loss of individual dignity can be seen everywhere. Over 1 million abortions per year in the U.S. and Canada alone. Assisted suicide as an option for depressed teenagers, the MAID program in Canada. You had something, what was that you just mentioned the other day about that?
Yeah,
suicide?
that in Canada now, if you've got a vaccine injury, you can choose to be euthanized. That's one of the, okay, wow. So that's that MAID program. So if you want to do assisted suicide, they'll let you do it if you can show you've had a vaccine. If the jab had created too many issues for you.
Well, all of this, plus our government's fascination with silliness and their current anti-human bent for full spectrum dominance over all of humanity and the earth from the cellular level to the planetary, these are problems. Some of these people mean no harm, but they represent symptoms of envy and apathy that are slowly destroying our civilization. If that sounds harsh, just take a look around and evaluate whether what you're seeing happen here is evolution or devolution.
Devolution.
I'll vote for that too. I've got a piece here where I respond to that Y-Files video. I'll do that sometime. This video right here. We are the aliens who made us. He deals with the topic of panspermia. And he does a good job because at the end he shows where the scientific experiments that were done to prove that panspermia could not happen. Again, the idea that these elements landed on the earth from comets or whatever, and just through these amino acids, just through perhaps lightning bolts or some kind of, they sprung to life. That takes an awful lot of faith. But that was proven to be impossible. That just doesn't happen. In fact, if There hasn't been, if evolution worked that way, I don't think 14 billion years, which is 13 billion years, I think is what they say the earth is now. That's not long enough for life to spring forth from it. Creation requires a creator. The Kalam cosmological argument, right? It's whatever begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist. That's supported by scientific evidence. Therefore, the logic of the facts is that the universe absolutely has a cause. So if you're committed to logic and science in your search for truth, then you have to acknowledge that the cause of the universe must be external to the universe itself. It has to be transcendent and has to be capable of bringing the universe into existence. That cause necessarily, it must be uncaused, uncreated, and eternal. There's only one such being described anywhere in reality, anywhere in any religion. And that cause is the God of the Bible, the God who has revealed himself in Scripture. So we invite you, if you want to do a Bible study today, take a look at Galatians chapter 5, verses 16 through 25. And that's where we'll finish up today. And it says this: walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other, to keep you from doing the things you want to do. What he means there is that he's talking to Christians. And Christians want to not sin. So he said that the flesh keeps you from that. Verse 18, but if you are led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Again, the Galatian heresy, a lot like the heresy at Colossae. They wanted to pull them back. You have to be circumcised. You have to do the ritual cleansings. They wanted to pull them back under the law. Now the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. Paul says, I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, meekness and temperance, or gentleness and self-control. And against these things there is no law. And those who belong to Jesus Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. I think it'd probably be good if we Colossians 2. How do we find truth? Where is truth found? Apostle Paul, writing to the Colossians here, says, I want you to know how great a struggle I have for you and for those at Laodicea and for all who have not seen me face to face, that their hearts may be encouraged, being knit together in love to reach all the riches and full assurance, that's of salvation, full assurance of understanding and the knowledge of God's mystery, which is Christ. Pay attention to this. In whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Do you want to know truth? Do you want to know what the truth is about anything? Do you want all truth? You want to know it all? Do you want truth? That's where it's found. In Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures and wisdom of knowledge. There's the source of truth. But why did Paul tell them this? He said, I say this in order that no one would delude you with plausible arguments. This is how you defeat lies. This is how you defeat these deceptions.
Mic drop.
That's where the truth is found.
Mic drop.
All right, my friend. Summer, are you anything?
No. Man plans and God laughs.
Amen. God bless you, my friends. Tomorrow, by the way, we will have James Roguski live on this channel.
3 o'clock.
At 3 p.m. Eastern. Mm-hmm. Are you sure about that?
New York time, yeah. For us, it's 3 p.m. Eastern.
3 p.m. Eastern. All right. Mm-hmm. Take a moment, folks, if you would. Join us tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. Take a moment to like this video and share it. Leave a comment. And if you haven't, please subscribe. Help us. YouTube hates us. They hate our channel. And it's free for you to do all this, and it does help us. Download the Armor of Truth mobile app today. That's how you'll find out when we're going live, where we are, and what's going on. There we go. You get live notifications, a direct link whenever and wherever we go live, exclusive content, articles, reports, and resources. Whenever we write something, record something, upload something, you'll know immediately. Plus, you get all this, you get extra podcast material, Bible studies. And if you can support Armor of Truth financially, please understand every donation of any amount makes a great difference. And we want to thank those of you who have sent in some donations recently. We really appreciate it. You can use the Armor of Truth mobile app Give tab or visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links in the description under this video to set up a monthly recurring donation. You can do that on our mobile app, or you can do that at our website through our account there. Helps us plan for the future of Armor of Truth when you set up a monthly donation. So what are you waiting for, folks? Download the Armor of Truth mobile app now. Once again, I am Brad, and I'm joined by my talented and precious wife. She's back. She's here and she's back, and I'm very pleased to have her. Her name is Summer. Together, we're Armor of Truth, and we're seeking a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
Well, that's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity
The Übermensch
to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel and log on. armoroftruth.net.